Welcome to The Culture. We rest at the pulse of the community, providing all things news, music, fashion, events, and everything that we talk about in between. It's a lifestyle. We are The Culture. Thanks for tuning in. Today's show is brought to you by New Florida Majority. Sign up to vote from home. No lines, less contact, lower risk. Go to floridawill.vote to request your vote by mail ballot. Hi, welcome to the show today. I am your host, Jessica Garrett Modkins, and welcome to The Culture. Joining me today is Desmond Meade. He's the president of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. He is a civil rights activist, and now he is an author. Welcome to the show.
Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so honored to have you here. As you know, this book that you have, Let My People Vote, My Battle to Restore the Civil Rights of Returning Citizens, is a page turner. There are so many layers to your life. As you know, you've lived it. What inspired you, first of all, to go ahead and write this book?
Jessica, for quite a few years, people have been telling me that my story ought to be in a book or ought to be in a movie, I've always just really blown it off, just concentrating on the work that I'm engaged in. But at some point last year, it really, when I was seeing about the impact of passing Amendment 4 and how it transformed people's lives and gave them hope, I was just led to say, you know what? Let me go ahead and knock this book out, right? Because I do believe, just like you said, that in times of crisis, in times such as we're in right now, that people need hope and people need to know that in spite of the obstacles that we may be seeing today, that we can overcome that, we can get through this, right? And become even a better community, a better country, a better person, and so I wanted to share bits and pieces of my story, my journey towards coming up with Amendment 4, as well as a journey to end up eventually, I guess, passing Amendment 4 and all of the challenges that I faced and how I dealt with those challenges, right? How we take obstacles and turn them into opportunities. How when people may think of something as a setback, how you can view it as an opportunity to step up, and so I wanted to share it with the world, man. Hopefully some people will get inspired.
But we don't want to give too much away in about the book on a show, but it's about you and you're on the show, so we've got to delve into Desmond Meade. Let's just start with how you even conceptualize Amendment 4.
Wow. You know, the easy answer would be that, in I think the first quarter of 2011, when then Governor Rick Scott decided to change or amend the clemency rules, and made it even more difficult. Prior to Governor Scott being in office, we had Governor Chris that allowed people with less serious offenses to be able to get their rights restored automatically. That includes their voting rights as well. But 155,000 people were able to do so in 4 years. But when Governor Scott got in office, he rolled back those policies and made it even harder. And so now today, a person would have to wait 5 or 7 years after they have completed their sentence to just to apply. And then once they apply, we're seeing people wait 8 to 10 years afterwards, right? And so, and just to compare and contrast, in 4 years under Governor Chris, 155,000 people were able to get their rights restored. In 8 years under Governor Scott, less than 5,000 people were able to get their rights restored. And so that is the immediate answer as to what inspired Amendment 4. But I tell you, I think a deeper answer, and it touches on what actually drove Amendment 4, was my experiences going through homelessness and drug addiction and understanding, and at least starting to understand the power of love.
And you came through that with such selfless motivations to bring about change, not just for yourself, but for others. I still want to try to figure out how do you go from being homeless, pulling yourself out of drug addiction, and then focusing on changing the entire state of Florida.
So I'm listening to you, and the first thing came to my first answer that came to my mind was planning my funeral. You know, at the end of the day, I guess you could look at me planning my funeral as a critical moment, right? That takes me from one spectrum and leads me into the other one. Because when it was a time when I didn't want to live anymore. I thought I was useless. I didn't have any self esteem. I mean, I was unemployed. I was broke. I was fresh out of prison. I was addicted to crack cocaine. I was homeless. All of those things. And you know, in that moment, I felt like, at the end of the day, I dishonored my parents. That I knew that my mom and dad didn't even raise me to be in the position I was in that day, and I was purely ashamed, and I was ready to end my life. And so I found myself on a hot, humid day in August, standing in front of railroad tracks, waiting on the
Mm,
train to come so I can jump in front of it. But what happened afterwards? Because the train never came and I crossed the tracks. But I asked myself a question right after I crossed the tracks, and it was a very simple question: Desmond, if you were to have died, right, how many people would come to your funeral? And so that question actually, when you pair it with the fact that about a month later, Rosa Parks passed away, right? And seeing the outpouring of love and sorrow when people paid their last respects as her body laid in state in the rotunda of the Capitol, those two things came together and exploded in my head. And the next thing you know, I was planning my funeral. Yep,
you were planning your funeral.
yep. You said don't give him everything. So now people need to buy the book and see, well,
Too. They
what about planning a funeral actually lead to a life of advocacy and eventually becoming Time Magazine's 100 most influential in the world.
yeah.
There's a whole lot packed up into that.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot more to tell, but I would still be writing if I had to tell it all. But it is. I think when you thinking about your funeral, it causes you to reflect on your life, right? And the things that you wish you could have done, or the position that you wish you could have been in, right? It allows you to actually think about those things and actually apply it moving forward from that day forward. Because you're not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what do you want? What do you want your funeral to look like? There's this story about the headstone and the graveyard, how it has the day you was born and the day you die. And then there's that dash in between, right? And the most important piece is that dash, man. What have you done between those two dates? And I think when you think about death and you think about planning your funeral, it really helps you put in perspective things that are important in life and what you need to really live for, right? Because you could be living to get a nice car, but when you dead, that car don't mean nothing to nobody, right? But if you're engaging in things that where you can leave a legacy, right? So where people gonna know you was there, and I think about that, and I walk through the graveyard sometimes, and I look, and I wonder how many people, just forgot about that person. How many people have died that we've forgotten about? Can't even remember their names now. There's nothing significant that they've done or a way that they've impacted our lives, right? And so if we live in the mind frame of I need to live a life that is impactful, right? So when I die, the impact will still be felt even after I'm long gone, right? Something that my family, my beneficiaries, my kids could hold their head up and say that Desmond Meade, my daddy, or my uncle or my cousin. um, and I think if that kind of stuff guides us, I think it really helps to really focus on doing some things that are meaningful to our community and to our state in this country.
Well, that you have done. You have checked that box. You have done many things that are meaningful. A lot of people voted for Amendment 4. Uh, but what I want you to explain with that, what did that actually mean, and where are we now with that ruling that so many Floridians voted in favor of and agreed with you?
Yeah. So prior to Amendment 4, Florida was one of four states that permanently barred American citizens from having their civil rights restored. And those civil rights also include the right to vote, the right to serve on a jury, the right to run for public office. And so once a person is convicted of a felony offense, any felony offense, they lost those rights for the rest of their lives. And Florida was the worst state among the four in disenfranchising American citizens. And at the time, when I got involved, I think it was over 1.54 million people that was living in Florida who could not vote because of a prior felony conviction. What Amendment 4 did was create a pathway so that people with felony convictions have an opportunity to regain the right to vote back without having to go through a governor or politician and beg for some type of clemency. That we don't have to, we have an alternative route that we can go where we'll be able to participate in democracy and use the power of our vote, right? Because the power of our vote can be a very powerful leverage to force people to address issues that are important to us. And so, and then on top of that, I mean, nothing speaks more to citizenship than being able to vote anyhow. And so we launched a constitutional amendment that would modify the Florida state constitution to allow people with felony convictions to be able to vote again after they have completed their sentence. Um, it would not apply to people who are convicted of murder or felony sex offenses, but everyone else, once they complete their sentence, they have the right to register to vote and participate in our elections.
So then everyone agreed with you
Yes,
passing
everyone did. Well, for the most part, the majority of people
the
agreed.
majority.
But
Yeah,
then
yeah, the majority.
the then the legislature decided that they wanted to get involved, and I term it as arrogance of politicians, right? And I say arrogance, and the reason why I say that, I kind of liken it to a story of a homeless family that's been living out in the streets for year after year after year after year, and politicians would walk past that family and not lift a finger to help, would never lift a finger to help that family through rain, sleet, and snow. These people, this family is out there suffering. Then the community all decide to come together and say, no, we're gonna do something about it. We're gonna build this family a house. And they did that. And no sooner did they finish building the house, here comes the politician trying to come in the house demanding how we furnish the house. Right. And that's exactly what they did with Amendment 4. Because felon disenfranchisement was on the books for over 150 years in Florida. 150 years. And they never lift a finger to address it. And so we, the citizens, took the matter in our own hands and we passed Amendment 4. And as soon as we passed it, they insisted that we need them to implement it, to tell us how to implement Amendment 4. And, in spite of our resistance, and we told it doesn't need any implementation language, at least no legislation coming out, but they insisted on it, and they came up with legislation that really codified the different financial obligations that a person would have to satisfy before being able to register to vote. And immediately after they came out with this legislation, and it was signed into law, I believe in July of 2019, uh, organizations like the Brennan Center for Justice, the ACLU, Legal Defense Fund, and Southern Poverty Law Center, they filed suit in the Northern District Court of Florida. And in probably a little bit less than a year, they actually won the lawsuit. And the judge basically called most of the legal financial obligations of poll tax
Right.
and was unconstitutional. And then the other legal financial obligations that were legitimate, what the judge said was that they're legitimate. However, it's this thing that we have in our country that basically says that just because you're poor or being poor is not a barrier and should never be a barrier to access to democracy. And just because you're poor, right, that don't mean that you can't vote. And the state didn't like that ruling. They appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. And just a few weeks ago, the court handed down a decision that overturned the lower court's ruling and sided with the state and now mandates that every returning citizen that owe outstanding fines and fees have to pay those obligations or satisfy those obligations before they're able to register to vote. Now, the bad news is that that is going to impact about 774,000 individuals. And these are people who have some type of legal financial obligation. But the good news is that that still means that there's 5 to 600,000 returning citizens that don't have these financial obligations that can register to vote now. And the other good news is the fact that the people across the country have stood up and we've been able to raise over $25 million and paid out over $25 million to people who are too poor to pay their fines and fees, right? And then the good news is, more good news, is that we are still continuing to register returning citizens every day. And even though the registration deadline um, that a person would have had to register prior to if they wanted to participate in this year's election. Even though that's passed, people can still register to vote right now today. They just may not be able to vote in this election, but in subsequent elections, they'll be able to participate in it.
Thank you for talking about the money that your organization has been able to raise, because there was some speculation out there about the fact that Bloomberg was your financier.
Oh no.
And the amount of people that have donated in comparison to that one individual, I'm just talking about not necessarily monetarily, but just the amount of support that was accompanied by a donation, a monetary donation.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I mean, when you stop and think about it, Bloomberg is worth $57 billion. He don't need to fundraise nothing. Okay. So there was something that wasn't totally accurate with that story to begin with. And at the end of the day, we raised over $25 million, and that came from over 88,000 people across the country, right? We've had sports teams like the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Orlando Magic that has donated. We had players like Myers Leonard, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, right? We've had stars like Ariana Grande, John Legend, Erica Alexander. So many people have stepped up to the plate. Organizations like Viacom and Levi's and different foundations. I mean, listen, the entire country responded to what was happening in Florida, and that was a beautiful thing. And it should never get overshadowed,
Right.
right, by a story that's not even totally accurate. And no one person overshadows the work of so many great American citizens that have stepped up and really said, we're going to free the vote here in Florida because nobody should be forced to choose between putting food on their table or voting.
Right, right. And you mentioned the Miami Heat. I saw you out there on virtual audience, and they were talking about the fact that they gave a donation to FRRC, and you were in the stands. Did you get to see the replay? I mean, the game, the Heat.
Yeah.
But
I listen. I enjoyed it, and I was rooting for the Miami Heat. But here's the deal, right? We had a win-win situation because no matter who won, I think the biggest winner was voting, right? Because both teams are actively pushing voting. And then you have LeBron with the Los Angeles Lakers that have his organization More Than a Vote, which we've partnered with anyhow. And then we have the Miami Heat that's really helping us with our Let My People Vote. So more than the vote, let my people vote. At the end of the day, vote is still going to win. No matter what team wins, vote is going to be the biggest winner.
And then
Right. And we're going to spread awareness.
you were just here in Miami spreading awareness with your bus tour. You met with Harvey and Kath.
Catherine Fernandez running. Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did it go?
Oh yeah. So I tell folks that FRRC is popping bands to let people vote. We popping bands around here, right? We came down to Miami and we dropped off a $7 million check. $7 million, right, to help assist, thousands of returning citizens in Dade County who otherwise would not have been able to participate in elections, who otherwise would not have been, because a lot of these fines and fees end up resulting in people getting their driver license suspended. Now they can't get a good job, they can't get back and forth to work, and so we were improving the quality of life of our returning citizens. We were expanding democracy, and right, we were infusing serious revenue into a court system that's hurting right now financially. I mean, clerk of courts throughout the state, court systems throughout the state are experiencing a budget crisis, right? And here we are, probably the only organization
Yeah.
that has been able to infuse some serious money into our court systems so our victim compensation funds could be funded, so our teen court funds could be funded. So we creating a win-win-win situation while also improving the lives of returning citizens, of people that we hold in highest regards.
And you've been doing this in other counties as well. You were at Titusville, I think, the day before, and you gave a donation there.
Man, that was, yeah. So that story there, man, that clerk of court had a $500,000 deficit, and they went to the county and said, y'all, we need some help, right? And the taxpayers are gonna have to pay that. It's gonna come out your pocket. And so we showed up there with a check, not for $500,000, but for $551,000, right? And here's the thing: we knew going in that throughout the entire court system, that 57% of the employees were forced to either be laid off or have their salaries reduced. 57%, because there was no revenue coming in. And so when we infusing like $25 million, man, not only is it saving taxpayers dollars, man, but it's saving people jobs,
Right.
right? And their livelihood. And so they can feed their families and stuff. And so I think that, at the end of the day, the work that we're doing is a great service. And then when you couple that with the fact that my organization, when COVID-19 hit Florida, we were the only organization in the entire state, to even include governmental agencies, that distributed masks from Key West all the way to Pensacola, all the way to Duval County, and all points in between. We went to prisons, we went to jails, we went to homeless shelters, distributing masks and sanitizers. And so the work that we do, right, we do it because we want to create a better community, right? And we know that if we advocate for returning citizens, because the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so if we empower returning citizens, then our whole community becomes even more powerful. Everybody benefits from that.
Absolutely. And what you're doing, it is nonpartisan. It's a human issue. It has nothing to do with the party that you line up with. This is a human issue. If there are people who would like to give a donation, Desmond, what do they need to do?
They can go online at www.floridarrc.com. That's floridarrc.com to donate. They can also go to wegotthevote.org to donate as well. And then, of course, if folks want to, if they have a loved one, a friend, who have a previous felony conviction, who feel like, that their life is over, they can't get as far as they would want to go, number one, you give them a copy of my book,
Right.
right? So that if I can do it, they can. But then the other thing is they have them contact us, or you contact us. You can dial out 1-877-MY-VOTE-0, or you can go to our website and connect us with your loved one, or even if it's you, get connected because we are an organization that is made up of people with previous felony convictions, as well as people who have loved ones that have been impacted or is now being impacted by the criminal justice system. And so we just want to create a space for folks to not only be able to heal, but to also be empowered, right? And we're open 24/7. You can hit us up 1-877 my vote 0, and I promise you somebody will get back to you soon. If not, hit me up on the gram or on Twitter, and let me know that the people not responding, and I'll crack the whip on them.
Thank you so much, Desmond. I want you to give us some closing motivation for those people who might be feeling down, out, alone. Can you just speak to them?
Wow, I've had so many nights like that. The night before I stood in front of railroad tracks, I slept on a bench. I was homeless many years before that, but I've always slept like in an abandoned building, behind the dumpster, somewhere out of sight because I was ashamed of someone seeing me who might know me, whether it's family or friend. But that night, I slept on a bus bench right there on the major thoroughfare in front of everybody's eyes. I just didn't care anymore, and I'm gonna tell you that wasn't the best space for me. But what I do know is that we can overcome even the darkest of our moments. The darkest part of the night is right before dawn. And, if nothing else, my story shows that no matter what life throw at us, right, that we can take it and we could overcome and we can do great things. But there's two things that have to be present, I believe. Number one is that you've got to have some type of commitment to serving others. Our life improves when we do the type of work that benefits other people, right? And number two is that whatever it is that we do, that we make sure that love is at the center of it, because I'm a firm believer that love does, in fact, conquer all. And I've been seeing it over and over again in my life. But I know with love and with service to others that you are destined for greatness. You are destined to overcome those obstacles. And those obstacles, those things that used to wear you down, are now the very same things that lift you up. Right. And I'm telling you, it is a beautiful feeling. And it's nice being nice. It's even greater when being nice is making a difference in your community, right? And
Amen.
so,
Amen.
hey, keep pressing and
Yes.
keep doing God's work.
Yes. Thank you so much for leaving us with those words of encouragement. Viewers, I just want you to know, go out, either get the audiobook like me or go to any outlet online. You can get his book, Let My People Vote, My Battle to Restore the Civil Rights of Returning Citizens. Is in stores now. Thank you so much, Desmond Meade, for joining us. We welcome you back throughout all of your journey, because I know that there are other things that you're going to want to leave our viewers with. And we thank you all for joining us. We'll see you this evening at 6 p.m. where you can catch us with My 2 Cents. And if you're looking for any up-to-date stories, check us out on our Facebook or any of our social media platforms at The Culture XYZ. We appreciate you joining us.
The Culture is produced and owned by Hip Rock Star Media and cannot be reproduced or broadcast without written consent by Jessica Garrett Modkins. All rights reserved 2020.